All right, the realestateexperts.com real estate show. Brian Crabtree here. I want to get right back in because I still feel like I have a lot to cover that I've promised you. Coming up in just a couple of minutes, mortgage purchase applications. What does that mean? Hit the highest level in 9 years. So that's about to tell us something. If you're going to sell, I'm going to tell you in 2019 what this number means and when this is going to impact the market. It's pretty clear to me because I've seen this cycle 20 times in my professional career of selling over 5,000 houses. That's coming up. But let's get back to the Atlanta real estate market. Has it hit a turning point? Yes. Is the turning point positive? No. Is it really bad? No. We've hit a turning point because 2017, October, we had a critically low number of available homes in the most desirous price ranges, and demand caused multiple offers, which caused prices to rise, which caused people to flood into the market to sell and take profits that had waited, had improperly timed the market, and then all of a sudden you have this slew of homes that was put on the market last February, March, April, May, when perceivably they should have sold instantly, that are now still for sale. There's a huge number, and they're in areas that have been historically very hot during the recovery: Alpharetta, Roswell, Sandy Springs, Buckhead, and beyond. A lot of that's because they have a bad agent and they don't know it, and some of it is simply because their price is no longer where it was. The best story I can tell you as to how to look at Atlanta real estate, because you don't have that 6-month trend fully developed yet. You had a bit of a mortgage rate reduction, which was unexpected in December, January, that stuck around fairly well. That's created some odd behavior where people that were going to buy in April or now have already bought and done something in January, made January look like it was going to be really good. We sold a ton of houses that month. February, March were pretty slow. And we've seen inventory on similar homes that we had in January are down quite a bit. We're still selling them and we're still seeing people, but they're not where they were. So all that said, you had people trying to time the market. You had an influx of people putting their homes on the market, and under 200,000, 300,000, not really a problem. It's still pretty strong, still pretty much a seller's market. But beyond that, where you had a pretty good market from 3 to 6 or 700,000, that somewhat has evaporated. There's enough inventory out there, unless you're trying to get a mansion in Buckhead for that price. So the turning point is that we're now at a point where we're going to become collectively across the board a buyer's market. And the interesting thing about housing is that it has defied gravity in its normal terms in the last 10 or 15 years. When the economy wasn't doing that well, housing started doing really, really well. That's because of social policy. I'm talking 2002 through 2005, 6 here. The economy was okay, but housing was on fire. So okay economy, insane housing. Why? If you could fog a mirror and get an ink pen in your fingers and sign a mortgage, you could get a loan and buy a home, which created wildly artificial demand that was detached from the normal reason that home and housing markets do well. Housing markets historically for 200 years in this country have done well over one reason, not location. That's the market or the area in the market. That's an internal dynamic. They've done well due to the job numbers in the marketplace. Jobs drive demand and ability to afford housing, create a detachment from qualification and underwriting, which we had in 2002 to 2006, and you end up with demand that's not artificial. So housing defied normal logic. Economy was okay, housing on fire because you didn't really need a job to get a loan, so to speak. Then we crashed. And so instead of letting the market crash naturally, this is where socialism isn't good. We socialize the entire housing industry. We made it part of our now socialist economy. It's not, do we want to be socialists? We already are. Do we want to continue down this path? Probably not. So we socialized it and we created these tax incentives and disincentives, and we borrowed people from here, put them over there, and we couldn't even figure out from an economic standpoint. Economics become schizophrenics because I can't keep up with this. It's like I can figure out what's going to happen economically, but not with all these changes. So then we went through this period of a very long time, which I would rest squarely at the policy of the Obama administration. I've gotten into this argument. I'm not here to bash Obama. He's not the president anymore. I'm here to state a fact as I see it based on my vast level of expertise in this business. The problem with the Obama administration and the people within it is they didn't understand the economy. They didn't account for human behavior appropriately, and they kept the economy and the confidence at a lackluster performance level. It, despite all of that policy, still wanted to perform, and because of their continuing meddling in the socialized side of our economy, they held back artificially the recovery, crash and recovery. Bush is guilty of this too, because his latter stuff was not very conservative, bailing out banks and doing TARPs and TERPs and all these things they did to bail out bad actors in the economy. The people that have now had the government say you can be an evil, greedy, bad bank like Countrywide and Bank of America, for example, and we'll still treat you like a good corporate citizen. Nobody goes to jail. It's okay. So that has created this onslaught of corporate criminals, whether they're technically criminal or not, they're immoral. So that created disruption, and it held back the market, and then it caused people who had kids go off to college, probably would have sold in an empty nester in a better market as the economy was getting better and jobs were improving, held back because that policy was holding back the market. Then all of a sudden, we go completely back to pre-Bush, which is deregulation, which is really how it ought to have been. But now we have altered and reordered the way housing works. Dodd-Frank, all of these new guidelines and the CFPB, and you don't even have to know what all that crap means to know, just sounds like a convoluted mess, and it is. Now you've got all this artificial part of what goes on in the housing business in order to qualify for a loan that causes some people who should be able to afford a home, they can't, and some people who shouldn't be able to afford can because they can fit into some arbitrary box, and it drives me freaking nuts. All right, so then you got all this going on, and I can complain about it and explain it, but we're not going to change it, so that ship sailed. We just have to deal with it. Then you've got this inventory thing, the natural human behavior. What I'm describing here is for nearly 2 decades now, we've had a tug of war between our incompetent, out-of-control government and human behavior, neither of which are reliable. And so therefore, to say what's exactly going to happen and be 100% correct is no longer viable because even the best economist doesn't know what the hell they're talking about. Because you can't factor socialism injecting into the economy and altering a capitalist culture's behavior. That's what we're going through. But I'll tell you this, based upon the greed, the immorality, and I'm not trying to be a Bible thumper here. I'm talking about generally just treating people like crap, okay? The cultural diatribes and back and forth, the political division, the student loan debt, the way mortgages are underwritten. I don't think we're going to suddenly run into a subprime market crisis that spirals throughout the financial system again. I can't tell you how this is going to develop, but I see a housing crash coming. And I see the crash coming not from a standpoint of that the economy necessarily is going to lead it, but we have detached housing from the economy because of socialism in the government and getting their tentacles way too far into everything and controlling everything on the auspices of protecting you and me, which in fact all they've done is empower big evil actors like Bank of America with floors of lawyers and high-rises to figure out how to screw us legally. That's the problem. And there's going to be a breakdown in that because you cannot have housing leading an economic recovery, an economic crash, or an economic boom. You have to have jobs leading housing, and I see jobs are detached from housing right now. Jobs in Atlanta are fine. They're phenomenal. It's great. The economy's wonderful. There's cranes in the air. There's apartments everywhere. There's all this stuff. But here's the thing. Jobs have to pay more. Inflation has to be in check. Jobs are paying a little more. Inflation's in check, but the expectations of housing is more than the jobs and the inflation and all of that can produce. And so therefore, the downward pressure on housing is immense. The upward pressure is minimal, which means housing values have to decline because of the nature of everything else in our economy, healthcare, cost, taxes, government control, bureaucracy, tech, complications. Those things are overwhelming people. And if I had to guess what's going to be the next big economic crisis in America, it is going to be the generations of people who have decided to spend their lives on social media predominantly and watching reality BS television. not investing into their brains and their education, suddenly being avalanched by artificial intelligence, the tech industry, and their jobs will evaporate at rapid numbers where robots take over and jobs are again outsourced, no matter what Trump tries to do, because if we don't get our social house and our political house in order as a country, this is what is going to happen. So here's the good news. I'm telling you, I think there is a crisis of epic proportions, much different than the last, on the horizon. But then there's this. Just to give you an escape hatch. I just bought a sailboat. The catamaran is turned upside down under the steps. There's an escape hatch. Here's your escape hatch. Okay, it's your life preserver. Weekly mortgage applications for home buyers hit the highest level in 9 years. I can tell you what that means. That's last week. What that means is that the behavior of people related to what's about to happen in the housing business is they hit the highest level in 9 years. We've seen some really good times. We're about to have an influx for about 60 days of buyers, an influx to meet those buyers with sellers. Prices will not rise. If they do, it'll be a point. They won't go down. And it's sort of like the Titanic. Now, I'm not trying to be overly dramatic here, but when the Titanic was about to go fully under the water, it bobbed there for a bit, up and down, almost looked like it was stabilized a little bit. That's kind of where I see the housing market right now, and there might be one more cycle of this bobbing past this April, May, and June. I think we're headed for some very, very bumpy headwinds in the old airplane here called housing very, very soon. So if you need to sell, trust me on this one. It needs to be sooner than later, or you'll just get a little less money. It won't be bad, but it'll get a little less money if you wait 6 months. TheRealEstateExperts.com. Reach out to us and have a great weekend. Thank you for tuning in.